The only thing that stands between the American people and a $2,000 emergency survival check is 52 Senate Republicans. America has 600 billionaires. Now, $1 billion doesn't sound like a lot of money these days. President Trump just signed a bill begrudgingly that has $900 billion in it. But trust me, $1 billion is still a whole lot of money. It's actually so much money that it's really hard to find words to describe what it looks like. But let me try. If you're, for instance, one of the 500,000 Americans who makes the minimum wage in this nation, and you're lucky enough to work 40 hours a week, guess how many years you would have to work in order to get $1 billion? 500 years? 1,000 years? 10,000 years? No, you're not even close. If you make minimum wage in America today, you would need to work for 75,000 years in order to make $1 billion. With $1 billion, you are leading a life that, frankly, none of us can really imagine, right? You've got private planes, you've got yachts, you've got household staffs in the dozens. You've got enough money to make sure that your children and your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren and your great-great-grandchildren never have to work a day of their lives. Generations of your offspring can just live lives of indolent luxury without a care if they so choose. You know where I was 2 days before Thanksgiving this year? I was at Hamden Middle School in my state to help hand out free food for the unemployed, the poor, and the disabled ahead of a long holiday weekend. And I noticed that down the hill from the roundabout at the school where they were handing out the food, there was a usually empty parking lot. And that night, at that moment, at the beginning of the event, that parking lot was lit up by hundreds of sets of headlights. Hundreds of cars just sitting there, idling in that parking lot. The cars started pulling into that lot hours ago. They got wind we were handing out food, and they got here early to make sure that they didn't get left out. We have enough food for 300 people, and there were 300 cars in that lot before I even got here. That is what has happened during this pandemic. Millions of families all across this nation, through no fault of their own, have lost their jobs, have had their hours dramatically cut back. They had no savings because work doesn't pay in this country anymore. They spent everything they earned each month. And so when the economy collapsed virtually overnight in the spring, they got desperate really fast. That's the reality of this pandemic. But here's another reality. Those 600 billionaires in this country, as it turns out, as a group, they lost nothing during this pandemic. No, exactly the opposite. They got richer. The richest 600 Americans gained $1 trillion over the course of 2020. 600 people in a country of 328 million isn't a lot of people. But you know what's a smaller number than 600? 52. There are 52 Republicans in this chamber. 52 people who are going to have a decision to make about what to do in a country where millions are literally starving as we speak, while 600 billionaires count the $1 trillion in additional wealth that they have accumulated during this period of national calamity. The question before these 52 Senate Republicans is simple. It's simple. Should we give $2,000 to low and middle income Americans right now to help them survive this crisis? We can vote on the House bill today, like in a matter of hours, if Senate Republicans agree. Now, a lot of Republicans are saying they object to the payments because it costs too much and it's going to add too much to the deficit. Well, frankly, spare me the fake righteous indignation about the deficit all of a sudden. 3 years ago, these same deficit hawk Republicans passed a tax cut bill that before the pandemic hit had already added over $200 billion to the annual deficit. There isn't a good reason to oppose giving Americans who aren't billionaires a measly $2,000 check to help them put food on the table for their kids in the middle of this once-in-a-lifetime crisis. There isn't a good reason to choose to make moms and dads all across this country decide which 2 meals they'll feed their kids each day, because 3 meals is not an option. $2,000 doesn't put dinner on the table every night, but man, going to bed hungry when you're 11, it sucks. And even dealing with it every other night instead of every single night, no kid is going to turn that down. There are 52 of you. And the next 24 to 48 hours, you get to decide. Do you protect the billionaires? Or do you choose to feed that 11-year-old kid? The only thing that stands between the American people and a $2,000 emergency survival check is 52 Senate Republicans. Some things in Washington aren't that simple, but this is.